Did disease cost you crop yield in 2025? It very likely did, and you might not even know it. That's what we're talking about in this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, where real farmers share real insights and real results to help you improve your farming operation. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
All right, I'm here with my friend Adam Byrne. He's with FMC, joined by Kelly Garrett, one of the founders of XtremeAg, and we're talking about disease management. And here's the thing. Your company and Gail, our friend, threw this out there. He's like, hey, I think a hot topic we need to cover is there's a lot of disease pressure that didn't even used to exist. You're from Michigan. I'm from Northern Indiana. We're sitting here at my office studio in Northern Indiana. We're seeing diseases up in this climatological area, Northwest Iowa, that we didn't maybe see 10 years ago. And we're not sure that we're treating it right. At the same time, we're talking about trying to save money because of where commodity prices are, and we might be really shooting ourselves in the foot because of not doing this from handling the disease. So I want to get to the technical part of it before I do. Did I just outline that correctly, Kelly?
Yes, you did. Disease definitely cost us money in 25, regardless of what we did, fungicide, nutritionals, anything like that. It was a really tough year. Second toughest year in my career.
So the natural inclination is, hey man, we've got a real problem with money because these commodity prices, we got to cut back on something. Maybe we don't need a fungicide pass. Maybe we don't need to take care of, the disease is not that big of a problem. We can let that go. Is that where people start cutting back?
We hear that all the time. The conversations are, where can we make cuts? Where can we save money? Yeah, I think disease management is right up there with weed control. Those are the two things that you make those cuts, you're losing money right off the bat. So I think you need to be investing those dollars into disease management, crop protection, but it's a matter of how do you best spend those dollars in terms of getting that return on investment. So it's not a matter of just prescriptively going out there and making applications, but it's a matter of well-timed and what are your targets and how are you doing it to keep those plants as healthy, reduce stress so you can keep that plant kind of through the grain fill period healthy and strong.
Diseases are worse now, am I right? That we never saw things like southern rust up in this part of the world? Or did we have it and didn't know it?
I think that's a twofold answer. Mm-hmm. I think we had it and we didn't know it. I don't think they're worse. I believe it's just a weather pattern. Mike Evans, my agronomist at home, he subscribes to the theory. We had a snowstorm in March, and the wind blew out of the south very extensively, and the ground even turned red in parts of Iowa. Mm. And we believe that the inoculum from that southern rust blew up at that time. Mm. And I thought he was crazy when he first told me that, and then he started to go through it, and he's like, look, the disease started from the bottom. Mm-hmm. The disease was in the soil. It didn't go from the top down, it started from the bottom up. So I believe that he's correct. So I don't know if diseases are worse, but when we have weather patterns and weather changing things like that, it can be worse for us, and a disease can come in that we don't have any immunity to.
Well, that's the thing I want to get to. We got to get a lot of stuff to cover. But anyway, Adam, my question is, do you think that we're going to get to where we have resistant fungus, resistant rust, resistant disease like we now have glyphosate tolerant weeds?
I think, in row crops.
Or are we there already?
No, I don't think we're there yet. I think in row crops, one of the advantages we have is we don't make weekly sprays like we do in specialty crops or so on. So we're usually making 1 or 2 applications maximum a year for these pathogens, and I think that plays in our favor. And a lot of the chemistries we're using across the board, maybe there's obviously some that will cut costs and use some of the cheaper generic or single mode of action, but a lot of times we're using multiple mode of action products. A lot of our premium fungicides have 3 or 2 modes of action, very good fungicides, so I think that helps delay or hold back that resistance development. So I don't think we're at that high risk yet. And a lot of work is done at the university level to kind of collect baselines when these new fungicides come out so we can kind of track whether there's development over time. So I think right now we're okay there. Mm-hmm. And kind of talking about, to touch on what Kelly was saying about are they worse or not, it's kind of a relative thing. So compared to when? Compared to 20, 30 years ago, yeah, sure, they're worse because tar spot wasn't around then. That's one challenge that's new to our system. But otherwise, really, better or worse kind of fluctuates with hybrid sensitivity and where we're gearing some of the hybrid selection.
Ideally, our tools are better to manage it now than they were then. But you can also argue, well, on herbicide, our tools aren't any better. In fact, I think we're going backwards on herbicide. So I'd say,
one book that I have read, we've talked about it, When Weeds Talk. All right. I think the weeds are getting worse, and I think the diseases are getting worse because we're getting worse at farming. We're out of balance so far nutritionally. That's what's making the weeds tougher, and the chemicals don't work. And we're out of balance so far nutritionally that our plants are weaker. Our plants are not as healthier, and the diseases make it worse. So I don't believe that the weeds or the diseases are getting worse. I believe the plants and our nutritional balance is going backwards.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to that because we don't spend as much time on plant health and abiotic stresses that are out there, and those all we know can exacerbate the effects of diseases or the impacts that are coming in and how that plant is able to manage those stresses.
Is the highest yielding area of the field the cleanest area or the dirtiest area? It's the cleanest area. And the reason it's the cleanest area is because we have a nutritional balance for fertility there. In the lowest yielding area, that's where the weeds are the worst. And we've always believed it's because we didn't have canopy. No, it's because the soil's out of balance and the herbicide doesn't work correctly. The soil's out of balance and Mother Nature's bringing that weed to try to correct it. The fungicides are the same way. If we can correct this nutritional imbalance, we'll shore up a lot of these weaknesses.
You seem kind of like the university type. I don't want to be insulting here because you're probably like, I'm not the university type. I'm not professor type. But you mentioned the thing about university trials and all that. I don't know that some of the stuff that we thought was prescriptive based on university recommendations 30 years ago still applies.
I don't think it necessarily does. I think there's been a change. I think our hybrids have changed too, so grain fill period is stretched out and maybe longer. And I think the other thing that's going on is in the old days before things like tar spot or southern rust, which this year it surprised us, kind of came up out of nowhere. We've been talking about tar spot every winter, and now we didn't really have tar spot this year, but southern rust snuck in. But those are diseases that we don't have a consistent timing in terms of onset.
We don't.
And so we used to preach prescriptively, let's go in at that tassel, that VTR1 timing, make a fungicide application. That was probably your best return on investment for your crop.
That speaks to the nutritional problem that I talk about, though. I agree with you. Everybody wants to go in at R1. In agriculture, we've got to a spot where we just want to hit that easy button.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. We're going backwards because of that.
You said, before we hit record, you gave a fantastic illustration about justifying the investment on disease management because you did some custom farming and they wanted to pull back every nickel, and the example was disease cost you.
Disease costs very poorly, or very much. There's 2 80-acre parcels that we custom farm for a landlord. We rent some ground from them, then we custom farm for them. And we got into the August of the year, late July of the year, the corn market was in the tank and things like that. They did not want to spend any more money. And so there was no fungicide, there was no nutritionals or anything like that like we did on our own crop. And I would tell you that it cost them 40, 50 bushel. Yeah. And so people want to make these cuts and they don't want to spend the money and things like that. Well, top of the line fungicide, what's it going to cost?
You actually gave a real number. You said 170 bushels on one and like 210 over here.
It was 220 on our corn, 170 on that corn. There's 50 bushel.
Yeah, and a fungicide. That's $4 corn, that's $200.
Exactly.
And what's
a premium fungicide? You're running $20, not counting application costs.
Yeah, so $40 all in, which is very high.
That's high.
There you go. 5-to-1 return on fungicide in a $4 corn market.
And then you also have a thing, Keller. You talk about offense versus defense. Sometimes on this thing, you're doing it. If the disease is already there, you've lost, right, Adam?
Yeah.
If you go out there and you're like, oh God, you got tar spot, terrible. And if I treat it,
terrible is a bad. Yeah.
I'm already lost.
I always say if you're scouting by driving down the road, looking through your car window, and you see it, it's too late.
That's that easy button again.
Yeah, that's right. You need to be in tune with your fields.
I don't know if I like that. When I was a DuPont intern, I did most of my scouting that way, but I did get out sometimes. Yeah. If I was drinking beer, I'd have to get out and pee, and I would go out and actually stand on the edge of the
That's
field.
when you might find the early infection.
Yeah, but I mean, most of the time. So about every third beer, I'd actually get out and check the field, but the rest of the time it was more of a drive-by. You're saying that's not effective?
No, I don't think so. But I
wonder why I never caught on at DuPont.
But I think where we get to that tassel application, the idea is, well, if you spray way before it's there, you're protecting yourself. I think that's a misnomer too, because with something like tar spot that can ramp up very fast and wipe out your crop quickly.
You could be putting out the product before it even has any purpose.
You're almost burning your residual activity up with no pressure yet.
The timing has to be correct, and that's where the easy button is to spray at R1. Well, then we're going to try to do a little better. We're going to put a preventative out. We're going to spray at V10, pre-tassel. But if it's too soon, you've got to scout, and it's difficult. Not only do you have to scout, but then you got to get you got to get the plane service there at the right time. It's another challenge. I mean, it's tough.
And we struggle from an agronomy perspective to talk about these things because we're talking biology and what's the best approach for a grower. We don't take into those operational constraints, getting the sprayer in there, getting the airplane. I mean, those are
playing the weather, having the hired guy, July 4th weekend.
Logistical trouble. Yeah,
it's easy to say what we say and then not realize the constraints the grower has because there are real challenges, and so that has to be juggled. But there's no doubt in my mind, looking at what we've been seeing with the fluctuations and timings of these diseases, that being in tune with your fields or your hybrids, it may not be the same across all your hybrids on your farm.
And when the disease comes, it isn't like a cookie cutter textbook thing like last year. We've never had southern rust like we had this year. I said it was the second worst year I had. That was 2014. We've never seen northern corn leaf blight like we did in 14. That was a very tough. That was the worst disease year of my career.
You gave the example of 50 bushels on that thing, and it's pretty much side by side. It's a custom farmed field, and then it's yours over here, and same treatment with the exception of fungicide, no fungicide.
Right.
1 pass, 2 passes.
Depends on the field.
Okay.
Could have been.
But in this example, it could have been.
I'm talking like overall average.
Yeah. So in this example, so they lost 50 bushels. It could have been that 2 passes would have prevented that, and it could be $40 to $50 even saying with some, whatever. Okay. On the math part of it, on the money part of it, I guess I want to know. When we said we opened this thing by saying, "Does this cost you money?" and maybe you don't even know about it, is that a reasonable number or is that an extreme number?
Oh, I think that's reasonable. I think we see that over and over. And we had a trial in Northwest Ohio this year where tar spot actually did move in this field. And we had treatments where you had an untreated, you had a foliar fungicide at VTR1, a prescriptive application of a premium fungicide. And then we had another one where we used an at-plant fungicide, Xyway LFR, and followed it with a timing of a fungicide when the disease pressure was ramping up. So it actually ended up being 10 days later than that VTR1 timing. And that foliar fungicide at VTR1 gave us an 80 bushel gain over the untreated. But that one with the well-timed fungicide following that at plant, keeping that plant healthy, gave us another 12 bushels on top of that. So you're talking 92 bushels over an untreated. So it is real. I think those numbers, in some fields and some situations are very real. Now, could it be some years where the disease pressure is low, you don't get that return? Absolutely.
There's so many variables that go into it. The hybrid response.
Yeah.
This, with our 24-row planters and then our 12-row corn heads, we most of the time, quite often, we'll have 2 different hybrids, maybe from 2 different companies in the tank when we're planting. This year with that disease, it was not uncommon to see 30 or 40 bushel from 12 rows to 12 rows. And so you just don't, and you can't out-predict it because you don't know what the weather's going to be and you don't know what the disease pressure is going to be. That's why you need to be a diversified seed portfolio. But you're talking about what's the response.
You think okay, now we're getting into the recommendation for the farmer, the person watching this that says, hey, hell, maybe you're right. Maybe I did lose. I think I did lose yield. I ran through that field and that normally I was off. So we got the person, yep, I'm in agreement with this. So the recommendation is, first off, you both mentioned seed. It wouldn't have been my first to go to. So what are you saying?
Some companies' seed would be, in my opinion, of a more northern germplasm.
Yep.
And anytime you're going to have a disease with the word southern in it, you're going to have a problem. Some companies' seed is going to have more of a southern germplasm, and I go back to 14, northern corn leaf blight. You're going to have a problem, and you don't know what's coming. And so, it used to be you'd have this hot number of corn, and my dad would want to plant all the acres to that. We talked about that. Well, then as I started to learn and get older, and you talk about this disease pressure coming in, I want to plant the bigger portfolio that I can because you don't know. It has to be a shotgun approach because you don't know what the disease pressure is going to be. And so my recommendation is plant it all. The bigger diversity, the bigger portfolio seed you have, you're being safe. You're taking a more conservative approach, and you're not gambling on said variety, said company seed. When I was younger, we only planted one company seed because you got that big discount. The discount's not enough for the risk you're taking.
The seed company is either liking this discussion or hating this discussion because we're giving them credit for actually having seed that can help us with our mitigation of the disease. And on the other side, they're saying, wait a minute, we want the farmer to buy only our stuff, and he's saying buy everybody's stuff.
No, I think like any of the industry partners in agriculture, we need to be held accountable and we need to be pushed to do better at what we're doing, right? And so I think we always say, and at least at the university level, the recommendation should be start with your seed choice. Start with your hybrid selection, because that's your first line of defense. Okay, so if you know a history of what you've had in those fields, so white mold in the north in soybeans, you got to pick a variety that's got tolerance to white mold. It's not susceptible.
So
Same with corn.
Recommendation we're starting now for the farm that says, okay, I did have some disease problems. I'm convinced that's why I lost yield. First one is, you say, vary up your seed. Okay,
Diversify.
Number two thing. What if I want to decrease the disease loss that I had, or have no disease whatsoever, which is probably impossible. What do I want to do?
I think you need to be in tune with your fields. You need to be scouting, and you be prepared to use.
Not just every third beer driving down the road. You're saying
you
actually
need to get out and look at your field. Yeah, and so when we say,
do people really do that?
No, they don't like to sometimes. No, I think the progressive good farmers actually do. I think most farmers are in tune with their fields, but it's different now. I think we need to be better at monitoring what's going on. But then I think you need to be prepared to not just prescriptively make fun.
All joking aside, a lot of the people that are with us are amateur agronomists themselves, or have consulting agronomists on staff, and that's make them earn their money. I mean, not making them, they're doing that anyway, but they are in the field, and they are really
absolutely.
Some basic things, rotation, which I'm not good at. I have a lot of corn on corn, but then pay attention to the hybrids that you're following up each other with. Don't put the same germplasm behind the same germplasm behind the same germplasm. You need to vary that. It's still not as good as a rotation, a corn seed, corn bean rotation, but you cannot. You can't continue to stack. I would continue to stack Corteva genetics on top of there. I would move. I would put some Bayer in there. I do things like that.
You got to diversify. It's just like your financial portfolio. You're silly to put everything in one basket.
Okay.
Very much.
Seed, scouting, diversification of germplasm. What else do I need to know? Obviously, I think we're going to talk about treatment.
Yeah, treatment. I think, and be realistic though. You have to understand there's abiotic things that are going on that are contributing to yield loss that we don't see. Whether it's warm nighttime temperatures. This summer was crazy. Everybody's talking about why didn't we see tar spot this year, but we saw southern rust, which was unique for us. It came further north and earlier than we've seen, but tar spot didn't blow up. Why? Well, we had a lot of warm nights that didn't get below 80 much, in the upper 70s. And when you don't dip down to those cooler nights, you lose yield. I mean, there's physiological factors that have been studied that you need those cooler temperatures so there's other things that lead to yield loss. It's not just what we think of weed competition or diseases. There's other factors that are stresses that can make the diseases worse.
And those are less of a factor. You're in Michigan, I'm in northern Indiana. Those things are less factors where he is in northern Iowa than it would be with, like our friend down in Matt Miles talks about, nights that are staying 90 degrees.
That's right.
We still have some of that pressure here. All right, I got seed. I got diversifying my seed. I've got scouting. I've got the germplasm and rotation, and now I've got the actual treatment with the stuff. You make fungicide, but there's a bunch of other stuff. There's some that is way expensive because it's got 7 modes of action. There's this other kind that's been on the shelf for a long, long time. What do I need to think about when I want to do my treatment?
Well, in the custom farming example that I gave you, the farmer, the grower there didn't feel like they had that in their budget. Leave room for it in your budget. That's not the place to cut. So leave room for that in your budget. I would tell you, like in a year when you have depressed corn prices, dry fertility, your dry fertilizer, that's where you should find a spot to cut, or maybe your seed population. Find a spot to cut there. Don't cut
on disease mitigation.
Yes, that's not a spot to cut. Look at what it did this year. Look at what can happen. Then if you don't need to use it, great. You've got that room in your budget, but you need to leave room for that in your budget.
Anything else on this thing? Because disease, you are convinced of it, and you're not just, I don't farm Michigan, that don't affect me. Your FMC has a global footprint. This is not a Michigan problem. Disease cost yield in a lot of geographies. Fair?
Yeah, fair. It's to me, it's the number 2 factor you have to be prepared for. Weed control is first. If you don't have clean fields with weeds, then the disease problem's not even a problem, right? You didn't get there.
Adam, did people let their foot off the gas because of the money, or they truly got surprised with diseases that we didn't see before, or a little bit of both?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think we did get caught off guard with southern rust, but it's not any different than being caught off guard by when tar spot emerges. If we're prepared and kind of budgeting for this, it shouldn't have caught us off guard that much. Southern rust is novel, but we should have been ready to react.
I think the first time something happens, we get caught off guard. I think the answer to your question is yes. People didn't want to react because of the money, but then also the first time something happens is bad. When is the first time we saw tar spot? 21? I can't remember.
2018 was probably the first bad year. It showed up over in your neck of the woods in like 2015.
Yes, there you go. I remember, I was talking about XtremeAg when we talked about it in Illinois, but the first time when a disease comes, it just decimates things. Nobody's prepared.
Right.
Northern corn leaf blight in 14, 15, 18, things like that with tar spot. Now 25 with southern rust.
Yeah.
And the next time it comes, we're better prepared because of the expensive education we've received.
Last thought on this, there's a lot of pressure on things like monocropping and, no rotation and all that. And then just like there's people that are saying we wouldn't have to use antibiotics if we didn't have those pigs in those tight confinement or whatever. Are some of our practices like cover crops and some of the things he's doing, is it going to mitigate the disease thing, or is the disease thing such that just kind of like these damn weeds that we have a hard time killing now, they can outpace us even though we change some of our practices?
I think we may make management decisions like rotation or not that could short-term impact some disease pressures, but no, I don't think we're going to mitigate or get rid of the disease pressure. It's going to cycle somehow, some way. I think we're always going to be dealing with challenges to the plant health and how can we keep that return on investment, but that grain fill as best as we can. And I think that's the reality we're going to have to always
do. You, as a farmer with 25 years of experience, do you think that there's some practices you can do that can also, besides the treatments and the things we talk about, is cover cropping change this? Does enough rotation lessen the pressure?
It does. Like we talk about the corn on corn penalty, corn on corn yield penalty. It's real. It's there. What is it?
We've always thought it's not fertility at this point.
It's not. And that's what I was leading into. I'm glad you said that. I don't believe that this nitrogen credit, which I don't believe exists, and now with the more education I've got, this nitrogen credit is the reason that the rotation yields better. What if it's disease? What if disease is 50% of it? You know what I mean? I don't think it's fertility at all.
Yeah. So if you are going to limit your rotation, you really got to have your intent up.
You're raising the risk for things like crown rot or stalk rot. I mean,
which also happened this year.
Absolutely, it was a big year in areas for that. Yeah. So you're raising your risk by management decisions, or you're lessening your risk with some decisions, but it's gonna cycle back around. I mean, I think we're always going to be dealing with disease management one way or another.
His name's Adam Byrne, the company's FMC. If I want to learn more about your product lineup to help me manage my diseases so I don't take a crop penalty like I did possibly this year, where do I go?
You can go to ag.fmc.com.
ag.fmc.com. His name's Adam Byrne. His name's Kelly Garrett. I'm Damian Mason, coming at you with a very special episode here at the Daily Rosa Farms in the studio with these guys talking. And we're talking about disease management that you might have missed out on. It might have cost you money. You know what? You're here to learn. Share this with somebody that can learn from it. If somebody didn't get the yield they probably thought they should have gotten, very likely could be disease. Share this episode with them and check out all of our other great stuff at XtremeAg.farm. Also, remember, you can become an XtremeAg member for just $750 a year. You get access to the agronomic data at the end of the year from guys like Kelly and Mike Evans and his whole team at Calibrated Agronomy. You also get special offers to go to things like Commodity Classic, and you get invited to our data conference, which we're having at the end of January. Go to our website, XtremeAg.farm, sign up. If you're an XtremeAg member, it costs you nothing to attend our data conference, and you'll have 2 days to mix it up with guys like Adam and Kelly and me and learn and have all these in-depth discussions to help you farm better. Till next time, Damian Mason coming at you with XtremeAg.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation.